recording to this computer. Lovely. So, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Talking Stick Show. So today I am joined by Polly Baldwin. Hello, Polly.
Hi, how you doing, Dale?
I'm good, thank you. How are you doing today?
Yeah, really good. Yeah, I'm
Good,
good
good.
actually.
And
Yeah.
we're gonna have a hat show then. Polly was looking for a
I'm really
hat.
good. I can't find my hat. I always wear one. I've been out this morning and I don't know where I put it. The dog's probably run off with it. That's normally what happens. But yeah, I'm
So
without my safety net. So yeah.
so Polly, so tell the listeners and those who don't know who you are a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay, my name's Polly and I run a wellness events company called Jolly Allotment, and we put on lots of different events that all are based around the fire, but also based around gut health, connection to food and soil and self. And they're really primal needs gatherings. So they're all about reconnection to self through primarily gut health and emotional health, and all of those things, from starting in the soil, which is where our gut health starts, right the way through to the soul. So we do a little series called Soul to Soul, Soil to Soul, which is all about the food and the soil and gut health, but it's also about, you know, energy and Reiki and breath work. And we're really a soft introduction to all of this stuff for people. So rather than I like to introduce people really softly to all the people that have helped me heal. But I used to think all of this was just a load of tosh. So I really, our audience on a lot of events tends to be people that are just sort of dipping their toe into their primal needs and how they feel, and their emotional health. And then we do some other events where people are really already fully you know, fully believers of it, or experiences of it, really, rather than
Yeah.
believers, probably a better word. Yeah.
So you've got those people who are kind of the toe in the water a little bit, then you've got the
Yeah,
swimmers as well.
yeah, exactly. That's a much better way of putting it. And I think actually I have to keep reminding me why I started it, and I started it for the toe dippers. So although we do things like we're doing a 3-day event, 3-day festival next year, and that will be more for swimmers, I think, but there'll also always be something for toe dippers, because I think when you really need all this stuff, it can sound really scary, and sometimes it can sound, it's not pretentious, but if you don't know about it, it can sound like it is. And when people are really disconnected from themselves, the last thing they want to be told is that they need to connect to themselves. So therefore, you know, like, we like to do it gently, and we do that mainly around, you know, food and fire and primal needs and somatics, and explaining to people how the gut works and emotional health works, but also how our bodies somatically know, like for instance, they somatically know that fire is a place of safety, and that's how our bodies begin to repair when we gather around fire. So it's a gentle way into things, but we always have the best and most beautiful speakers that are fully immersed in it, but can also gently
Yeah.
deal with the toe dippers, or
So
invite the
it's
toe.
so it sounds like that. So it's kind of like, it feels from what you're saying there, you kind of like it's the medium back to themselves, and in a sense that they're coming to you, or they come to the space, come to the fire, and those natural needs of just what the senses and what the body, what the spirit really wants, and not trying to be too overloaded, because a lot of people can be overwhelmed with all the spiritual stuff out there. And one of the things I've had to deal with was taking a step back and making sure all of my stuff I am, say, marketing or doing is kind of like, not, I wouldn't say dumbed down, to the wrong word to say, but it's more of the senses of what all about the body, and what it needs, instead of being too far in the light or too far in that spiritual process, which can make people run away. They'll see
Yeah.
that and they'll be like, right, like that you'll say something, or they'll see that and they'll be like, right, that's not for me. But for what you're doing, it feels like there's a great medium for you to start bringing people back to themselves in that natural way.
Yeah, and it's about bringing people back to themselves and toning down the woo-woo is the way I always put it, which
Yeah,
always
I love that.
and then by the end of the morning or the afternoon or the you can feel people really immersing themselves, and that's when we can sort of introduce a bit more of the woo. And I even call it that, like I'll go, right, we're going to stay away from the woo woo this morning, but by this afternoon we'll probably just introduce a bit more of the woo. And then I work with some really beautiful people that know so much about crystals and herbs and Reiki and sound healing and energy. And I tend to be the person that stays in the space that helps them connect to that. But through my experience of remembering, thinking it was all woo woo, and whereas the universe has really helped me heal from what happened to me, and the right people come into my life at the right time when I've not gone looking for them. So it's about, we start all our sessions with a breath work, and I ask people to ask themselves and ask their bodies, how do I feel, and what do I need? And like, people never ask themselves that question, and the body has always got an answer. So we've just really learned to not listen and to outsource to go to the doctor and ask them what's wrong, rather than asking our inner soul that really does know. The gut and the brain are living things that know what we need, and we forget to ask, or we sometimes ask and don't listen. So for me, it's all about gently connecting people with science and experience, and then a little introduction of the woo woo.
Yeah, and it's great because that right there is it's really nice to hear that, because I don't really hear that from many people, what you're just saying there, which is vitally one of the most important things on the woo woo journey, the spiritual journey, on the human journey is I'm going to be saying you got me saying that now. I'm going to be saying it, but yeah, is so listening to the body. For me personally, there's so much ideology out there with food, with things, with this and that. And what you're saying is the truth of going back to listening to your gut, listening to the body, because there's things out there which ideology which makes people go off the natural eating cycles or what they're meant to eat, and they end up becoming really ill. I've been there. I went vegan at one point, and I thought this ideology of all this and that was going to save me, and I was the most best vegan in the planet. And all of a sudden, I had this. This was about 8 years ago. I got bulimia. I got anemic. Sorry. I ended up losing loads of weight. I ended up getting really seriously ill, and I didn't have a clue. And it was only till then I started listening to my body, asking my body. My body was saying, "Protein. I want some strong protein inside me to grow my muscle." And I've had that, Polly, where I've gone that way and I've experienced that, what it can do. And this kind of crosses over a little bit to about your story and what you've gone through. So maybe we can connect the two.
Yeah, and that's what's scary, and that's why that's actually what's scary about any diet. And I also, before we go into my story, I always say to people, the best diet for you is the one that suits your body. And the problem is, when all these diets are idealized, then we go on the train of, this is the right thing to do, this is the right thing to do for the planet, this is the right thing to do for me. And again, we've outsourced what the right thing is, rather than coming back to the self and deciding for ourselves what the right thing is for me. So I know all the signs of what's right for all the little bits of ailments, but I'm a great believer in that, your body will tell you. Like, if you're allergic to something, your body will tell you. So, but yeah, it's super interesting. it's really good that you did that, because so many people would not go back to, they don't listen and they just get sicker and sicker and sicker. But they think they feel good because they feel good mentally because they're doing the right thing.
Yeah,
So yeah.
that's it. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
I call it the Enlightenment Trap, where
Yeah.
there's a false sense of enlightenment, and what you're doing is an enlightened path, but it really traps you, and realistically, you become a zealot to your own cause, where you think you're doing good, but you're not. You're
Yeah.
damaging yourself, and I'll hold my hands up. I've been there. I've gone through that zealot mode 8 years ago. I
Yeah.
look back and see pictures, and I'm like, wow, I was so ill. And that was me thinking I was I was all spiritual, I was this, I was that, and I had this false sense of enlightenment trap around me, where I thought I was doing good because I was vegan, I was making sure my
Yeah.
products blah blah blah. And yeah, it's great that you've started and spoke about that, Polly, because that is such a big thing in the spiritual community at the moment.
Yeah, I think as well, it's really hard to get off that road when you're on it. And particularly if you have an illness that you're trying to fix. And it's really difficult to know how long to stay on the road. And to be honest, a lot of people drop off it quicker than they should, and you always feel worse before you feel better. But equally, yeah, it's just knowing the signs really. But I suppose it would help people if they knew what happened to me. So
Yeah, there
maybe,
we go. We'll cross
yeah.
perfectly the
Wow.
synchronization
I was like,
there.
oh, this is probably sounding a bit abstract now. Um, yeah, so 2014, I was living in the mountains in France. I was an extreme sports photographer. Had a very sort of high adrenaline, high cortisol life, above average fitness. I was hanging around with a lot of athletes. So although I didn't feel very fit, in reality I was. Um, and I went away for a few days in Spain. And while I was there, I'd cycled there. So I cycled from the Alps to Spain, northern Spain, over a couple of days. Wasn't really a big thing for me to do that. It was just something that I could do and did. And then I loved the journey of that, like that was like my meditation then, I suppose, without me knowing that's what it was. But while I was in Spain, I got bitten by a spider, and I ignored it. So it was quite a nasty bite. I ignored it because I was due to go out for dinner with my family, and everybody was telling me to hurry up, you're late. And I was like, oh my God, I'm letting everybody down. Ignore the big thing that's going on here. And we went out for dinner, had way too many Spanish gins, woke up in the morning, thought, oh my word, the mother of all hangovers. I was really trippy. I was like seeing spots and just dizziness. And we were driving back to France that day because I got a really big job in the Alps. So didn't do anything about it. I just thought I'd got a hangover, hit my 30s and got a hangover. And immediately that's what happens when you're not at altitude and you drink. That was my logic. And I never did anything about the spider bite because I just got busy. Life got busy. So I got sick, I got pneumonia, I got a cold, I got all the things, just ignored all the things and thought, I'll be all right, I'll get better, and just got back on that. I did a lot of corporate work then, as well as the action sports stuff. So I just kind of got back on that train. Skip forward a year and a half later, I couldn't walk, couldn't get out of bed. I'd had to move from the Alps back to Yorkshire because I wasn't safe to be in a mountain environment. I got really chronic arthritis, so I couldn't hold my camera anymore. So I went through an absolute loss of everything, really. A loss of community, a loss of connection to who I thought I was, a loss of my job and my career, which I really identified with, a loss of my connection to food, because my parents had restaurants. I worked in the food industry, photographing a lot of restaurants. Like, I couldn't, I just wasn't able to eat things. And I think the scariest moment for me, because when all this was beginning to happen, and it was like a really slow decline, I just assumed it was my age, and I just assumed it was stress, and I just assumed it was, you know, all self-inflicted, actually. You know, like, I didn't look after myself well. I went through that whole sort of guilt thing of like, and I just had so much shame attached to how I was feeling. I didn't talk about it to anybody. I just kept it really quiet, which then obviously detached me from the community and the people around me. So and the scariest moment for me when I realized I needed some help was I knew that I had to get a train in New York to go to London, and I couldn't work out what time I had to leave my house. I just couldn't do the basic maths. And then when I got to the train station, I stood in front of the ticket machine, and it was like I was a 3-year-old that had never seen a ticket machine before, just had no idea how to use it. It was like, like, I don't know if anyone's ever been to a real foreign country like Japan. Like, I've been to like Japan, and you look at a machine and you're like, what? It was like that, and I just literally just had no clue what the slots were for, or it was really frightening. And it was then I made a call to a friend, and I was just stood on York Station in tears, just going, this has been happening. I mean, it makes me emotional thinking about it now, but I found it really hard to ask for help at that time. So actually making that call was like the biggest thing. And they were really good. They drove an hour and a half to come to the machine to help me get on the train, and like, it was all good. But I started to get help from there on in. So, basically, long story short, is I spent the next 2 years trying to find out, a year and a half, trying to find out what was wrong with me. The friend that had come to help me was a chiropractor. She was really into a naturopath, really into her gut health. So she put me already on a gut healthy diet, a gut rehabilitation diet. But I spent a lot of time trying to find out, lots of tests in the hospital, trying to find out. At this point, I'd just completely forgotten about the spider bite. They thought I got like MS. They thought I got early onset dementia. And then they, like loads of things, they tested me for all the autoimmune things. Nothing came up. Lots of other diseases, and nothing came up. And then eventually they surmised that I was just depressed, 30-something-year-old female that had no children and needed to get a hobby, which is what my doctor said to me. And I was like, yeah, no, I had depression as a teenager. This isn't depression. I am depressed, but I'm depressed because of the physical thing and the loss of everything, as opposed to you're depressed and that's caused the physical breakdown. So I knew that. I always knew that. And I think that's what my inner fire was, to fight for myself. And eventually I did have a diagnosis of endometriosis, which is like cysts on the ovary. But I saw a really amazing gynecologist. He said, you're in too much pain for it to be this, but let's get this out and see. And during the process of the operation, they put a camera in, keyhole into your belly. And he kept me under for like 3 hours. And I was lucky because I was in Sheffield, and because that's where my parents were from, and that's where my, recommendations for doctors were. And also it's where it's all teaching hospitals. So there's a lot of really good people there. And it was a Sunday. I'd had to go privately because I couldn't get it done on the NHS. And they basically called every expert in that I'd already seen, and some that I hadn't, to show them my insides. And I had no protective tissue on any organ. So I was about 2.5 stone lighter than I am now. And they just couldn't, that had no protective tissue on my heart, no protective tissue on a lung. It was like I'd had this massive, well, I had this massive viral, you know, reaction to something. And when I came round, and crucially, I had no gut wall. So I had no gut wall at all. And I now know that the gut wall is the great connector to absolutely everything, from our, you know, emotions to our soul, to our health, to our mental well-being, to the way we feel. But I didn't have one. And when I came round, they said to me, you must have had some kind of really allergic reaction to anything. When was the last time you felt well? Well, I hadn't asked myself that question. Like, I just hadn't asked myself, when was the last time I felt well? I was so busy being sick. You know, the thought of being well was like, I couldn't even look at it, because I was like, if I look at that, then I'm going to get really sad. I just have to concentrate on how I feel now. And my dog's grumbling, sorry. And she's going, yeah, it was horrible, because she was here through all that. She's like remembering. But yeah, and I said, well, the last time I felt well, I rode my bike from France to Spain, and I've never ridden it since, not in pain. And he was like, well, did anything happen? I said, oh, I got bitten by something. And he was like, have you got any photographs of it? I said, yeah, loads. Showed me. He said, oh, you've been bitten by a widow spider. You've had a massive reaction to it. You've never had it seen to. And interestingly, I did take antibiotics, but about 2 months after the actual bite. And he said, your body's just got post-viral fatigue, like a massive shock to the system. It's never rectified. They then found out that I was celiac. So, because I was like, why has this had such a massive reaction to my body? And they're like, well, you must have been compromised before for it to have had. And they found out that I was celiac, which we should have really named, but I never showed up, because my mum and my brother are been tested, never showed up. So yeah, so I found myself in a place where they just said, we can't help you. There's nothing we can do. You're just gonna, it's too late. You're just gonna have to learn to live with the pain, the brain fog, not being able to walk very far, you know, and basically just said, you're just gonna demise, is what the guy said to me. He said, you're just gonna have to learn to find a way to live with this.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not an option. And for me, then it became an option of ending it or finding a way through it. And I was just really lucky to know some people that helped me, and helped me by being there as friends, but also by, well, bringing me up and going, eat this, try this. And I started to get a little bit better. And then about 6 months later, I was photographing a medical conference. We used to do a lot of those. They don't let me in anymore. But I was photographing a medical conference, and they'd flown this amazing rheumatologist, and I'd got really bad arthritis at the time. And they flew him in for an hour. And I thought, right, this guy's come all the way from Toronto for an hour to Italy. He must know what he's talking about. So he stood on stage. I was photographing. My boss at the time knew what was going on. So she was like, just stand in the back of the room, take photographs, just be quiet, don't, just listen. And I'd been prescribed some steroids at the time, and I was told they wouldn't really help, but they might make me feel a bit better. And the guy put the actual bottle of steroids, and this is why I know the universe was helping me. He put the actual bottle, the right brand, the right make of steroids, picture of them on the wall with a sign saying these drugs do not work. And then the next slide, so I'm obviously standing there in the room going, you know, okay, he's talking to me here, like, who has arrived in the room? And then the next one was, unless the patient has severely rehabilitated their gut microbiology. So I was like, okay, interesting. And they'd done this, like, at the time, 5-year study. It's now a 10-year study on the people that have been taking these steroids who they did a placebo group. They did a group that had really looked into what was going on within the gut and with the gut wall. And they did a group where they just gave them the steroids, and they didn't work in the group where they had just given them the steroids. They worked a little bit on the group that were eating healthily, but not having really looked into what was going on. They worked really well on the people that are rehabilitated and got rid of parasites and all the other stuff going on in the gut. And but interestingly, the people that had just done the gut rehabilitation had also got better. So I managed to get an hour with this guy, well, 45 minutes. I had like a speed date with this guy because my boss said it's a 40-minute walk back to the terminal. Don't want to send him on his own. Can you walk him
That's
back?
so good.
And I was like, yeah, I can walk him back. I can walk him back. And I was like, okay, this is what's wrong with me. This is what's happening. And I was just talking so quickly. And he was like, okay, you need some help. And he's been amazing. So he gave me a diagnosis there and then. He was like, you've got malabsorption of the gut from post-viral fatigue. You don't have a gut wall. And he's since seen the pictures and things. And he says, yeah, but you can rehabilitate that through food. And he said, it will take a long, long time. He said, but if you really stick and you really believe and you do all the other things. And I was like, well, what are all the other things? He says, you have to reconnect to yourself, your soul, your community, your beliefs, your inner child, he said, you have to attack it from the amygdala down and the gut up. And I was like, that's the most powerful thing anybody's ever said to me, because you go to so many gut events and days and everyone just talks about what you eat, right? No one really talks about dealing with this, because the two talk to each other. When we are conceived, we are an egg, and then we split into two, and half of us becomes our gut and the other half the brain, and everything else grows from there. So if you're not attacking it from your health, from your spiritual and emotional health, I call it, I don't like the word mental health, but your emotional health and your physical health from your gut, and that whole thing about your gut instinct is such an ancient thing that's right. But if you're not attacking it from both ends, and I was getting better, but I'd just been attacking it from the food side of things. I had already had all the stool tests, knew what was going on and the science, and I was already doing that when I met this guy, but I didn't really have the full belief in it, because again, I already outsourced my wellness to doctors. But because he was a doctor that was telling me I was doing the right things, but also telling me I had to do all the other stuff, all the woo, then that's when I started to do the yoga, the breath work, the cold showers, the reconnection, the dealing with all of my ancestral wounds that are passed down from family to family, and really looking into my patterns of behavior and how I connect to people and how I connect to myself. And it wasn't until I started to attack it from both ends that I started to get really better. And that's why we do what we do at Jolly Allotment, because these things are really important.
That's incredible. And how did you get that spider bite then? How did you come about?
Literally, I'd taken my dog. So my partner at the time had driven down. I'd got down there and he'd driven the dog down. I hadn't seen her for a couple of days. So I took her for a walk in some long grass. I came back in the house, laid on the bed, and something bit me. It's like a really sharp, hot red poker here. on the left hand side, which is also probably not an accident, but it was basically affected my entire left hand side. So by the time we got back to France, I had a rash all the way from here right down to the toe. So it had really got into the system really quickly. But it only had the effect it did because I was already living on the edge of an autoimmune breakdown anyway, really. But it just made it worse.
It feels that maybe it's hard to say. Sometimes events like that in life, which are dark, which are not nice, sometimes they are spiritually contracted to us to have that. Like, say, between you and the spider, for you, what would, so how, if that spider bite didn't happen, what do you think the road would have been moving forward to you, the potentials there?
I think something else would have happened. And it's whether you miss the cue or not. And for me, so I when we talk about energy, you know, like your masculine and feminine, everyone has a balance of those, and I'm really into that. We don't really talk about it at Jolly Allotment because I think it's a little bit too for my audience.
should have a button just saying just a little bit too woo. A little meter going up and down to tell you.
But what's really interesting is that my journey has gone from dipping a toe in to, like, I've been introduced to the things I've needed when I've needed it. And about a year ago, a friend of mine, you must speak to, actually, she's in Amsterdam, and I had some somatic work, and she was like, you've obviously neglected the feminine side of you for so long, which is all the left hand side, and you're out of balance, like your masculine and feminine energy is out of balance. And if you think where I was in this very high testosterone, athletic, cortisol and adrenaline, which is really physically bad for your gut wall, but also I was just in this like harder, faster, stronger masculine world, and I'd really ignored this left hand side, this like nurturing, and actually it's because as a kid I now know I'm really empathetic and I read people's energy, and it gets overwhelming, so I've closed that down, you know, and I'm having to learn to open that up and know when to close it down. And I don't think now, standing here, that there was any accident it was my left hand side, because all the healing I've had to do has really been about the left hand side of my body. So spiritually as well as physically, it's all been about the left hand side of my body and about that rebalancing. So and also, yeah, so something would have happened if it hadn't have been that, because I do think that dark times are brought to us so that we can learn from them, and we either pacify ourselves and numb, or we go in. And I was just given no choice but to go in. Like, I was given no choice but to really have a really good look at what was going on, both physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. You know, just had no choice. And also it's just happened really naturally. And what's been amazing about it is it also brought me to heal all those, like, inner childhood, like trauma with a capital, like little T's, relationships with parents and family. And I think, like, my dad passed away last year and I did his palliative care at home, and it was the most beautiful experience because I had no expectation from him, because I'd done all of the work, because in order to get physically well I'd had to do all of the forgiveness, acceptance and understanding, and I wouldn't have done all that without the spider. So yeah, dark times, as you say, you know, so much beauty comes out of the dark. You just have to learn to sit with it and wait, in a way.
And that's one of so one of my favorite totem medicines is the owl, and they call that the eagle of the night. And that's where the dark, seeing that light in within that dark night, and being able to come through it to be able to manifest a healthy life. And your
Yeah.
story is incredible. It really is. That was one of the, I'd say, greatest stories we've had on the show, and it really,
Oh,
from what you've gone through, and the authenticity of how you're speaking the story, you can really feel that, and you can understand how far you've come, where you've slowly had the intuition to go, right, I need to go back here, I need to get this opinion, I need to be there. You're in the right place at the right time. So it's interesting you say that, because a lot of people go to the doctors, and I've experienced it with family members. My father just passed away, and lots of different health issues throughout I'm aware of within the family, and one of them is like high blood pressure, like you say, the high adrenaline life, and all from my experience of seeing people die around me is, you have to lower your blood pressure, you have to look after your gut, you have to look inside, or you're gonna more. I'm not saying we could get diseases, we could die from this and that, but the chances, you've got a better chance of having a healthier life if you really look after inside here. And it's quite sad in a way, because I've experienced it, close ones around me who have lived high blood pressure lives, adrenaline lives, unhappy lives. And it is so important what you were saying, and a lot of people just go to the doctors for that one opinion, and one person who in a coat who just says, yeah, you're depressed, you need this tablet, go on that for 30, 40 years. We're not going to talk about your issues to make you a happier person, to make sure there's not adrenaline coursing through your body all the time. And one of the main things for me is relaxation is one of the most important things for the body, and having time throughout your day to go, right, this is my relaxing time, this is where I let go of the high life of, like yourself, you have to provide, you have to do work, you have to do this. Same goes for me. We have to have those moments of, like you say, it's interesting you say it reminded me of why I chose a name. So I chose from the healing path to symmetry of health, and that was what you were speaking about was bang on. Why, and what I realized about health, that does not just say if you're looking after your gut, you've got to then be responsible for the balance on the gut, to the feminine, the masculine, the parents. All of that stuff connects to all of it, and it's a hard work, but there's a lot of stuff to do.
yeah, I think it is, and I think that's what we do. Jolly Allotment is we like, I really struggled at the beginning. We're actually just redoing all the website, because it says we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and we're now doing everything that we said we were going to do. But it's my dog knows that you're talking about owls. But thank you, darling. We don't need that. She's banging the door with her tail. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the owl, because whenever I need wisdom, or I need to trust my own inner wisdom, the owl will appear. And it's at Jolly, it's just so important it's important to me that people understand that there are things they can do that can really help, and you don't have to do everything all at once, but just by doing one thing and doing 1% something 1% better for yourself, you're going to improve your health. So like, if you don't eat olive oil at all, and it's about making these things accessible as well. So your good gut bugs feed off polyphenols. Polyphenols are in olive oil. If you don't have olive oil at all, but you just switch to the supermarket olive oil, that's good, because you're doing it 1% better. If you're already drinking olive oil, and then you go to this really nice olive oil that we use at the Jolly Trolley, that my friend comes from a field in Crete, where I know the farmer and I know the soil, and it has all of that connection, then yeah, that's going to add extra love and extra health into your life. But not everybody can jump from zero to the hero thing. And for us, it's just about introducing people to those little steps, because otherwise it can get really overwhelming. Like the biggest thing for me in the last 2 years has been breath work, and the breath and how powerful that is. You know, we do a lot of work around that in on our days, because it's the best way to connect to feel, you know, like the spiritual high you get off breath work, or the physical high, people don't want to call it spiritual, like my clients might not. You know, you see people come out of these days and they're like, we did I was catering for a retreat with some friends of mine that do yoga in nature, that do Reiki healing and drumming and yin yoga. They're just such beautiful people. And I was doing an event with them this weekend, and I was doing all the food side of things, but seeing people like breathe properly and be able to feel properly was like amazing, because we just don't, do we breathe to about here, you know, we don't. So all these little, just introducing softly all these little practices to people. It doesn't really matter if you believe in the bigger picture, because that has to be your own journey, I think. But just introducing these little rituals to people is really important. Like, I was struggling to sleep, and I had one Reiki drumming session off Jim from Yoga in Nature, and I literally have been sleeping really well ever since. And he was just like, you've got some energy in there that just needed shifting. And because of what I do now, obviously I take on a lot of energy from other people, and I'm not really au fait with getting rid of it yet. You know, I'm still working with that. So yeah, I get excited by it, because I just think that, you know, I am living proof that we can take control of our own health through all of these things. It's just engaging people. It's finding little soft ways to engage people that's important.
Outstanding, and that's something I do regularly. Before this interview, I did the breath work before. I always do it before any interview, or do it before a workshop. Do it in the middle of the day and do it afterwards, because it's fucking amazing. It really is. And if you're all out there who want to try it, I highly recommend. If you suffer from anxiety, if you suffer from not being in your body and not being in the present, breath work is a way to get you out of any panic attack or any anxiety attack.
Yeah.
It's that powerful.
I couldn't get out of the house when I was, you know, and still I suffer from anxiety. I still have to, all the things I had, I still have. So I'm still managing everything, but I can. And without the breath work and the movement, I wouldn't be able to get out of the house some days, particularly way back when I was really ill. It's much easier now. And I trapped a nerve at Christmas, and I couldn't get off the floor. I live on my own. I couldn't get off the floor. And the only thing I managed to get, my dog can fetch my phone and things from when I was been ill. And so she fetched my phone, and I managed to put a breath work thing onto my app on my phone. 30 minutes later, I could stand up. I was still in pain, but I could actually physically get up off the floor. So otherwise I'd probably still be there. But yeah, it's super powerful. I mean, if people out there do want to be introduced to any of these things, we've got a little event coming up that's just near Pocklington on the 19th of November, and it's all about fire, and how connecting and eating around fire can help your body to remove the cortisol and adrenaline. And it's all about how the connection to what you eat in the soil, and gut health. But we've also got Nat and Jim from Yoga in Nature coming to do a little breath work introduction, and plus a sound bath and an energy thing. So you should come to that day, actually.
Yeah, I let me know the details. I'll
Yeah,
definitely be on for coming to one and
I'd
meeting
love
you.
it if you came to that. So
Yeah.
but yeah, it's like a nice soft introduction to it all. So it's a little bit woo, but it's and the thing is as well, if you know all the energy stuff, and you're really into all of that, but you don't know about the gut health and the physical side of what to eat and what's good for you, those days are a really beautiful fusion of the two. So it's great for everybody, however you sit, and it's always a really beautiful community of people. So yeah, we're going to do more of those next year, but we've got this new polytunnel a friend of mine that's got a market garden, a regenerative market garden, has cleared us some space in his polytunnel, because for me it's about doing these things in nature and getting that connection. So we're going to try it.
So I would like to say I've really enjoyed this show. It's filled me with inspiration, and I'm definitely going to come over and do a workshop and meet you. And I did want to. I looked at your photography as well. You do photography. What's your contacts for the photography and the allotment, so on and so forth?
Okay, so Jolly Allotment is Jolly Allotment, and the best way to hit us up at the moment is either on the website, which is www.jollyallotment.co.uk, or it's just Jolly Allotment on Instagram. And we are on Facebook as well, but I'm not often there. Your best way to get me is on Instagram. And for photography, it's Polly Baldwin. And again, my website is actually down at the moment because I've changed so much in the last 2 years, and I now work with a lot of smaller independent businesses rather than the big corporates. So I'm just busy changing all of that because it didn't feel like me, and what was there wasn't me. So I just thought take it down. But my Instagram is still there, and you can get me through there.
Outstanding. And one of the things I am wanting to do going forward is next year is I'm going to invest into a video camera, and I want to do a few interviews live round the fire. So it may be a great some point in time when I do come over to do an interview by the fire and speak about certain things. So this has inspired me to keep going on and doing it at some point.
You must come though, Dale, because we do this. The fire thing is really important because it's all about your primal needs and what your body somatically and spiritually recognizes. And we start all of our days with that little ritual, even for people that don't know about the woo. So yeah, you're more than welcome to come to something. It'd be great to see you.
Outstanding. And thank you so much, Polly, for coming on the show. And I know this won't be
Pleasure.
the only time you're on the show, because I've had lots of fun, and it is inspiring, your story. It's got you, there's so much healing in your story. It's really good.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been fun, right?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Polly. Thank you, everyone, for watching as well. The Talking Stick Show will be back next week with Anna Louise Hay at some point at the end of the week. So thank you again, Polly. Take care, everyone.
Amazing. Take care.
See you later. Bye bye.